a blockchain-focused venture capital fund called Collider. And that's enough about me.
I'm Adlai Chandrasekhar, maintainer of Join Market and ambassador to the Tel Aviv Bitcoin Embassy.
My name is Wertheimer. I'm a Bitcoin activist, developer, consultant, and a blockchain skeptic.
Hi, I'm Zehavi. I'm a crypto veteran and the CEO of Antiki, a security token platform.
Hi, I'm Ofer Wallenstein, VP product at QED-it. QED-it develops a high-level SDK for doing zero-knowledge proofs.
Hi, I'm Nimrod from Simplex, CEO and co-founder of Simplex enables exchanges, brokers, wallets, and now ICOs as well to accept credit card payments with zero chargeback guarantee. We're also going to release in a couple of months the flip side of that, enabling you to sell crypto and take money through regular debit or credit card worldwide.
I'm Zidelson, CEO of Beam.
I'm Marshall Ball. I'm an academic cryptographer. I work on the foundations of cryptographic theory.
All right, so now you know everybody. Nimrod, let's start with you. You look like you're gonna sleep. So, what's your definition of sound money or hard currency?
Well, you gave me this one.
Yeah. Well, you work at Simplex, right? You're the CEO of Simplex.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Wow. I have no idea. I think it's some form of payment that people believe in. So I'm not really sure. You want to start fighting right away about crypto and money?
No, I'll take it, then you can fight.
Yeah.
How about that? So sound money is a monetary definition that's originated in the 19th century as part of the whole political revolution. And the concept was, to have asset-backed monetary policy, the gold standard. The evolution of that was actually stablecoin money, which introduced the notion of having a central bank with reserves and led to the dissolution of having the gold standard in 1973. So the concept of having a bare asset on Bitcoin, the maximal side, would actually be more of sound money, while as the side would be stable. Now you can fight.
Now we're starting to fight. Do you want to comment on that, or we'll move on?
I think it's cool.
Okay.
Good job, well done.
Huh?
The maximal.
Would you go ahead?
So a bit of a physical perspective. Most transactions are not done using sound money because it's more expensive, but you still want to be able to measure the value of different assets. So I would say that sound money is actually the asset which you can use as the most objective measuring stick. Nothing is going to be completely absolute. It's the same situation in the physical sciences. You measure everything relative to something else, but you want to find the least flexible measuring unit, and that's what I would call sound money.
I love the paradox. Nothing is going to be absolute.
So it seems that across the board we all agree that, that cryptocurrencies as they are today are not sound money?
You're looking at me. I want to fight about privacy.
Okay.
To comment about that, as was mentioned, everything is relative. So it's relative to what you want to do with that money. If I'm buying a house tomorrow and that house is priced in US dollars, then I would want to hold US dollars. I would not dare hold that money in Bitcoin. If you take that same house and you price it in Bitcoin, it makes a whole lot of sense for me to keep that money in Bitcoin. So whether that's sound money for me for that period of time, it depends on what my plans are to do with that money.
All right, let's move on to the next question. General privacy is quite democratized as a concept. How would you define financial privacy, and why do you think this concept is still so unfamiliar? Right? So we are all concerned about our own privacy. We don't want to be caught naked, right, outside. But not so much about financial privacy. Who wants to take this one? Now let's go with Marshall over there. Sorry, guys.
I think that to a degree, financial privacy, there is a notion of financial privacy that everyone is aware of and wants. Like, we don't want our credit card information to be published online and stuff like this. In fact, I think that this is probably the driving force behind a lot of practical cryptography is from the banking industry from a long time ago. I don't know. What my definition of financial privacy would be to be able to transact and interact with the world without anyone tracking me and trying to profile me as a person or anything like this.
Right. I'll add to that that people who are, like we see that a lot in the crypto space, right? A lot of people are extremely paranoid about their financial privacy, and society sometimes sees them as weirdos, right? Why are you so paranoid about your financial privacy? Yeah, Maya, you want to comment?
So I want to dispute the notion that financial privacy actually exists right now in the world, regardless of crypto. I think only in the last week we saw two things, well, in the last month we saw two things, that Zelle, peer-to-peer payment app in the US, has basically leaked all the different metadata, and people can pick up on any different transaction and what that means. Two, just this week, turns out that Facebook has been wanting to exploit the PSD2 and open banking movement in order to suck out financial data from banks and have it take a part in that, right?
They're allowed.
Sorry?
And they're allowed.
Exactly.
What? They're allowed.
They're allowed.
Well, no, because look how many banks push back. They can, but I think that's going to change. Right now, they're allowed. The APIs aren't happy yet. I think the notion of privacy as a civil right, only right now, because of the different scandals of privacy, are we coming to the realization that it needs to be protected. Up until now, it really was part of the crypto funk movement and crypto in general. But it's more and more becoming obvious that this is going to be a part of the political discussion between different regimes, right? In China, you see a whole entire movement that wants data and wants to suck up all the data in order to be able to have a centralized governance notion of the state, whereas the West is looking to regulate companies and protect their users.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should say though that there is a movement to sort of crack down on privacy in the West as well. Like the FBI is pushing heavily to put basically backdoors in all legal crypto systems. But the community, the cryptographic community, is pushing back against this for the simple reason that building backdoors makes things insecure. And a lot of the sort of strength of this actually comes from the fact that it would put all of our financial transactions as they are today, not in the sort of ultimate privacy sense at risk.
So, would you say that maybe it's a spectrum of being either too open, like with the FBI and everybody can know your private data, versus being extremely paranoid and closed, and the pros and cons in that? Is it like a spectrum? Like, where is the right place to be for us as a society?
Well, I think the right place is for every person to choose when to be private and when to disclose anything to anyone. And I think today, most of the people who are, not and even people in the crypto world, but definitely people outside the crypto world, are not even aware how not private their finances are, right? They have no idea that the government can, poke at their bank accounts at any time, and that some of their transactions are reported, and tomorrow all their transactions might be reported. And we actually, at Beam, we see it as one of our goals to promote this understanding, because today people are slowly but steadily being deprived of their privacy in all aspects, and in finances probably even more so, because governments see that area as so important, controlling it and making it as not private as possible.
So would you say it's not only a problem of China and Russia, but also the rest of the world?
I think it's not at all the problem of China and Russia. It's happening everywhere. happening everywhere with, starting with 1970s Banking Secrecy Act, and it's, growing more and more every day with different agencies having the right to poke and with information being delivered to the government by the banks and other financial institutions. So it is a growing problem, and people are not aware of that enough.
I would go further and say that the concept of financial privacy is so foreign, for the most part, because we've never experienced it in our lifetime. Our financial information is open to government scrutiny almost anywhere we live, regardless of which country. And that information is traded and shared between the financial institutions behind our backs all the time, and we can't do much about it. Now, to be honest, for the most part, this status quo, this system, has been working fairly well. And that's why, in many cases, we can't imagine what this is or why it's desired. And we often confuse privacy with security. Since our information is secured at the bank or at whatever institution, then it is private. And only when there is such a breach, like we hear about every so often, then we realize, oh my God, my information was not private to begin with. So I don't think we ever experience it and know what this is really.
It's also not a black and white issue. We have to distinguish between information being available to governments, who essentially are able to just legislate their way into having it, and that information being for sale to businesses and advertisers.
I'm not sure it's such an easy task to draw the line anywhere. I think that information wants to be free, okay? As long as someone is holding your information, anyone but you, assume that everybody has it. Everybody's not it, so I guess that is right, or at least. So I think my definition of financial privacy, and I think it's a myth. I don't think privacy exists. I can find out pretty much everything on everyone here. Okay, that's what Simplex does. We accumulate and understand enough of the transaction information in half a second, enough to understand if it's indeed you or not, right? And it's all based about information available to everyone, without us doing any forbidden act to get that information. My definition would be that I'm able to share on my sole discretion whatever I want with whoever I choose, and for that period of time. And I think it's impossible, even with zero knowledge. Because it's out there.
Yeah, I think it's also important to distinguish the different kinds of privacy. We talk a lot about being private from governments and corporations and institutions, and that's important. But I think that a lot of teenagers using Venmo are happily broadcasting all of their transactions to everyone, to their neighbors and their families and their friends. And if you're using cryptocurrencies to buy stuff, then the merchant knows what your paycheck is, which is insane. And most people don't know this. So there are very many types of privacy. I'm not sure that protecting oneself from the government is the most important one for everyone. There are many mentions of this.
Right, so let's move on to the next question. There's a conflict of interest when we speak about financial privacy between the need of transparency in order to fight illicit and criminal activities, and between the basic individual need of keeping financial actions as private as possible. How do businesses today deal with this situation, and how would you like to see governments and industries change their approach? Whoever wants, yeah, go ahead. It's not a democracy.
I think that right now, merchants are kind of keeping it secure. Emphasize on the kind of. I mean, try to analyze your history whenever your credit card details were stolen. Usually it was after you went to some hotel, right? Because hotels have crappy systems filled with Trojan horses. As soon as they swipe the card for the security deposit, your credit card details are out there. So there's so many endpoints which are exposing your data constantly. So again, everything is out there. I'm not sure there is an actual way for merchants, for businesses to keep your information secure. they're not keeping their information secure that well, and they have zero incentive to keep their information secure unless they want to resell it. So I don't think, again, I'm coming off as a nihilist here. I don't think anyone can actually achieve financial privacy. And again, if there is a mechanism for that, the first one who will actually use it will use it for illicit purposes. Think of Monero. Monero became the de facto payment method for online criminals.
Wow.
Who here holds Monero?
Businesses deal with the situation basically by making the disclosure of the private information prerequisite to doing business with them. If you don't divulge the information to the bank, you can't open a bank account. If you don't provide that information, you can't take a mortgage. If you don't accept our terms, you can't use our SaaS. That's how it goes. So right now, we're just giving that information. Once they have it, we expect them to safeguard it. And sometimes there's laws governing that. Now, we know that that's not the case. And there's breaches all the time. And still we say, I accept. Now, what can we do better? I think that when we look at that information, we have two types of information. One is operational information that is intrinsically needed for providing the services and goods that this business offers. They have to keep that information. They can't do business without it. So with that information, I expect them to do a better job at safekeeping it, and more importantly is to categorically avoid non-consensual disclosure. That's something that is completely under their control. The second type of information is non-operational information. That usually is collected as part of regulatory compliance, the things that we need to provide in order to open a bank account. Now, they don't really do anything with that information other than hold it when they're audited. And I think that with those type of that type of data, that type of information, we have a great promise in zero knowledge proofs, for example, such as QED-it provides, that would allow control and retaining your private information, while also reducing the overall risk and liability for the businesses.
Yeah, I think that may be true right now, but I think we're evolving into a world where there's a lot more data that is being used in order to price us, in order to commoditize us. And some of that aspect, specifically say insurance or financial products, is going to end up being sort of discriminatory. So another pool of data that you need would be the metadata of that profile. And this is where the mix or the blend that sometimes is used for security purposes, like Nimrod uses it, can actually be used against certain people. So that, let me just give a wild example. If you have certain health issues from a young age, maybe you won't be able to price an insurance product without having to pay a very high premium, right? So that's discriminatory against you. Now, would it be in your interest to divulge that information? No. Is it needed for regulatory purposes? No. But once a corporate needs that information in order to do what they call a private risk assessment, it can now be used and reused, even within the certain terms of services, beyond that one purpose where a consumer decided to press consent. And that's really the mix that goes beyond financial privacy and goes into the rest of your privacy. Do you really trust WhatsApp? Do you trust Zuck not to mix your WhatsApp and your Facebook and your Instagram? Maybe he needs it because he wants to price you a really good credit card solution in 2 months' time. But are you willing to press consent to have Bankapoli work with Zuck? I don't know. And this is why the fight to start defining privacy beyond just financial and so forth, but as a basic human right where people are in control of it is so necessary, given all the different fallbacks that Nimrod describes in the world today.
So how would we fight criminals? Someone buys I don't know, a contract to kill another person using Monero.
So can I take that?
Sure.
Yeah, so actually people were buying drugs and doing wrong things well before even the first computer was invented, and we'll do that after the last computer will be destroyed if it ever happens. So it's not about Monero or any other private currency. You know, United States dollars probably were used to buy much more drugs than all the cryptocurrencies will ever be used together. So the law enforcement, and we are all paying the law enforcement to catch the bad guys, right? Regardless of what they are using, what technology they're using. Today they're using a lot of messengers and smartphones and cars and other stuff, right? And we cannot blame the technology for what the bad guys are doing, because they will find ways to do their bad things always. And I think that's a very important message. So it's not about technology. It's not about private currency. Private currency, United States dollars are, the cash is actually private currency, right? So nobody sees what you're doing with it. And it's used a lot for criminal activity, but nobody's trying to blame Alan Greenspan or whoever is the current chairman for facilitating that. So I think it's a very important point, and at Beam it's also very important for us to make it very clear that technology has a lot of legitimate uses, right? It's not something that anybody created for criminals. It's not like a dark web portal where we say, buy drugs or hire some bad guy. Okay, so let's keep that in mind.
Bravo. The cypherpunks manifesto define privacy as the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. I think Nimrod said that earlier, right? How's their vision holding up, and what can we do to better achieve this goal?
I don't think we're doing well. I think from the definition that you mentioned, the keyword is selectively. I don't think that today most people are making a conscientious choice when they share information. So when James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, was making those jokes on Twitter 10 years ago, I don't think he was considering the full ramification of his jokes and the risk it poses to his livelihood 10 years down the line. He was sharing that information on a whim, probably, and there wasn't enough awareness of that these things can affect me in the future. And that's the same with privacy. We are not aware that this disclosure can have effect, and we're not thinking about it. We're not conscientious of it. What can we do? Like with a lot of things, it's education. So just like we teach our children how to cross the road, and we teach them about the importance of personal hygiene, we need to explain to them what is privacy, why it is important, because they are already sharing information at a very young age, and they need to know how to do that safely and understanding the risk, of course, as just like you explain anything else, you make it, you explain it at their level. But make sure that that concept is, you start to build it from a young age.
All right. Is a world in which financial privacy has been truly achieved a better world? List pros and cons, please. Which technology, not necessarily financial, do you envision the biggest potential disruptor? Who would like to take this one?
I think the only thing that will enable it, not only disrupt it, is, again, completely theoretical piece of technology that will enable you to delete information, but really delete it from anywhere, everywhere, every person who saw it, or whatever else. Without that, it's impossible. Completely impossible. Yeah, but Snapchat also, you're transmitting data. It's being even cached in CDNs.
It's tokenizing it.
Yeah, let's do an ICO on that.
I think there's not going to be a technological solution. The solution is awareness and keeping in mind those things, keeping in mind what cypherpunks were saying decades ago.
And is it good
Is what
to have more financial privacy? Is it necessarily?
I don't know what's good and what's not good. I think that most people have been for a decade or more at a disadvantage compared to people who lived here, I don't know, 50 years ago and before. This idea where you don't have any financial privacy is very new. I don't think we fully understand it yet. So if it's good or bad, I don't know, but I think that it's definitely dangerous, and we don't, as a species, we don't understand it yet. So I think that it's good for every individual to at least be aware of the consequences.
I think that when we're talking about privacy, relying on education and on your understanding is discriminatory by definition. If I teach my kids, because I'm so fearful of information, I teach them never to send anything over Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever, because everything is safe forever. It's what someone else is keeping using. So we can't rely on knowledge and education. We have to have an infrastructural solution for that, and I have no idea what that is.
It's funny that you said we need a way to erase data, because didn't someone from that side of the stage earlier say that information is out there and it wants to be free and it never goes back into the darkness. Information only accumulates. Libraries get burned, but that's not very good.
That's why I said it's impossible.
And I think that it's very bad that we are losing financial and other kinds of privacy, because essentially what they do is they force us to conform. They force us to think constantly, what will society think? What will people that know me and people that don't know me think of what I'm doing, how I'm spending my money, how I'm saving my money? And I do not think that we want a conformist society.
So sorry, one more. Yeah, so in my view, actually, technology can help us with privacy. Just what we saw recently with Telegram in Russia, where the government wanted to wiretap on everyone's messages, and Telegram didn't comply, and they couldn't do anything about that. With all their guns and all their firewalls, they could do nothing, right? And well, Telegram is a company, but in the future, we could have a solution that's open source and not even controlled by anyone. Right, so we are doing our step to do that in the financial area. Telegram is doing some really great job in messaging. Hopefully somebody will take the social networking in other areas. And in the future, I think we might have, with the advances in cryptography and with the ease of creating software with open source, it can happen. It will take a lot of time, but it can and hopefully will happen.
I know I'm the moderator, so I'm not supposed to answer questions, but one pro I had in mind is that if we have greater privacy, then there is smaller information asymmetry, right? And then we are into a place that we are empowered as individuals. So today the information is being held by very large institutions. It can be governments, it can be banks, and it can be Facebook, right? And the more power you give each and every individual, then we can be financially also empowered, right? We each start at the same level, right? The table is flat, right? You're not at some point in the pyramid of information. So I really like that idea. And I'll move on to the next question with that. Bitcoin privacy and fungibility. What's the status today, and which of the planned features in the Bitcoin development roadmap will enhance privacy and fungibility, and how? What might be the long-term benefits of privacy-oriented coins in light of this roadmap? Let's go with Udi.
So I guess it depends on the users again. So people who want to use, take take time to learn and utilize things like joint market that Adlai is working on, can achieve relatively good level of privacy right now. But they have to work really hard and really be aware of what's going on. And I think that there's an interesting understanding that many times the idea of privacy and fungibility jives very well with the idea of scalability in things like Bitcoin, because the terrible problem of Bitcoin and most cryptocurrencies is that you have to publish everything to everyone. Everyone has to be aware of everything, and this is bad both for computer science reasons and also for human rights reasons. And if you solve one of these problems, you kind of need to solve both of them. So it's optimistic in this way. You can kind of be hopeful that if you solve one of them, you can solve both. And Bitcoin moves very slowly, as we know. I think there are interesting ideas in all of the areas that relate to privacy. So Lightning might have a boost if people are using Lightning a lot, because then only people who transact within themselves know what transactions are being made. And things like Schnorr SIGs, when they start, they can do a lot to minimize the way you can distinguish different types of transactions. So maybe you wouldn't be able to know when something is an opening of a Lightning channel and a multi-sig account or a normal address. So that's very useful. Those things take a lot of time, but they're also very sound, I think.
So maybe we just need to be patient and wait while Bitcoin has all this privacy, and we don't need the code.
No. So we definitely shouldn't be patient. We should be going out there and build it. But build it, help build it, support it, and so on. There's a lot to do.
I think it's important, first of all, to use privacy tools, even if you are not the godfather and you need the best criminal privacy in the world. It's a human rights issue for people who might be hunted by people who are trying to violate their privacy, that they be part of a larger group of people who are using privacy tools. It improves other people's privacy, even if you don't have anything to hide yourself. About other coins, I think that it is very important that other coins exist. I do not necessarily see them as a replacement for Bitcoin. I have a bit of a cynical view here. I see them as bug bounties, that you build a system that holds real value and tests a new technology, and if it's not sound enough, then someone can claim that bounty because it holds real value and it's not just some testament. So I think it is important that these things exist, even if we see them not as a replacement, but rather as some sort of testing program.
All right. So what do you think about the quote-unquote creative ways recent projects have funded their development? What's your opinion of the ideal model for development of a new coin? Who wants to take this one? You can give a few examples.
ICOs only or other stuff as well?
Well, let's go with ICOs. I think they're the most creative, right?
I think that as a big
equity
big
round
fan,
is pretty.
Yeah, as a big fan of the VC industry, no, not so much. I'm all for ICO, just like Vitalik said that he wishes that all the centralized exchanges burning out. So hopefully follows that. And I think that it's. I'm very happy that ICOs are disrupting the VC industry, investment industry. I think that I would love to see a world where 95% of ICOs are not scams.
So how would you raise money to a new ICO, to a new project, to a new company?
I think that just blandly saying ICOs is kind of doing ICOs and token economies and in general fundraising that's going on in crypto an injustice. That might have been true about 2 years ago when someone only had to publish a Bitcoin address or an Ether address and wait for the money to come in. There's been a lot of progress, especially because of the bubble and the bull markets we were in late last year, and more of the low point where we're at today. Now, what goes into funding mechanism? Well, a lot has to do beyond the ICO, right? How do you build your fund economics? How much is pre-mined? Are your initial investors in the pre-sale, pre-ICO getting cents on the dollar? Are you incentivizing developers to come in and take part of that new network that you're building, right? Is the network in itself accruing value, much like the Bitcoin did, and has been a great, I think, symbol for how a network can accrue value and be democratized? Or is it just the value comes in on the private and then gets kind of shoved down retail investors later on? Are we building a fund or an ICO structure based on a waterfall securitization so that one company or one network raises 9 figures and then says they're going to do like paid advertising and ad tech and fund other developers to come in and build and then sell their own ICOs on retail investors who don't know any better? So I think we're still at the early stages, and the question is, how do you incentivize a network capture is still to be explored. I think we're going to see a lot more designs evolve within that space.
Yeah, go ahead.
Obviously I believe in the model that we chose, and I'll explain why. So Beam, we're raising money only from professional investors, no public offering. And the payout is spread in quarterly payments over 5 years, both for the investors and for the core team. And I think, and we're also not raising that much money. We're raising up to $8 million. We already raised 4, and we may be raising a bit more, up to 8. Which is not a crazy shitload of money, right? It's just the money that a startup would need to really develop the product and then release it to the open source and hope the community takes it up. So I personally feel that this is a really good model, first because it doesn't fool anyone. Like, we're only talking to professional investors that understand the risks and are not betting their last dollar on us. And also create this long-term incentive, both of the investors not to dump and to help develop the ecosystem, and for the team to continue supporting it and make sure it gets really far. And this way, we can hopefully build something really big.
I think that people are asking me questions about ICO, so I'm thinking about how I'm going to say this. I think that I definitely agree about the part about the VC model that can be improved. Unfortunately, it feels to me many times like the ICO landscape very quickly changed into just a new Silicon Valley, very quickly, like in months. And it's kind of like what Silicon Valley would have looked like if there would have been no rules, but it's still the same people and it's still the same money. So I'm not sure it's such a big difference. That being said, companies should probably be raising money, and it's a good thing that they have a way to do that. I'm not sure if it's a good model for building the currency though. So if you're trying to build some sort of an asset that just exists, then the idea of raising money from any kind of investor is problematic, I think. The problem with the way Bitcoin did things is that I can't see how anyone could ever do it again. So it's a problem. If someone wants to do something like Bitcoin, it's very unclear how you could ever do it again. But if you want to be this kind of an asset that isn't controlled by anyone, then you kind of want to be that. So that's being a company that kind of sells tokens that try to behave like equity, and the tokens also try to behave as currency. So far, it doesn't prove itself to make any sense for users using this currency.
This is also could be obvious, but I think it's worth stating. When you have an ICO, you can't choose your investors, and I think it's very wise that Beam has raised money from investors that you've chosen, because often taking on investors is a liability. Suddenly you've got these people involved who might have wildly different opinions or priorities, And with an ICO, you suddenly have thousands of people involved who might not know anything whatsoever other than that they want to make money. So it's actually quite a liability in my opinion.
All right. Whether you had the question that I didn't write, do you want to ask yourself it?
Okay, so I'll ask everyone else. So the question I thought would be interesting to ask is, what type of concerns should users have if they're going to use a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin or maybe something else, in a way that they would like to be private? So I'm talking about today, not 10 years ago with some magic tag. And if I'm just a user, I'm using cryptocurrency to, I don't know, trading or I'm buying stuff with it, I don't know what I'm doing with it, and I want to try to keep my privacy. What are the practical things I can do and what should I be concerned about?
First of all, you should be concerned that the entire infrastructure is not private. Everything is recorded, everything is maintained somewhere, everybody knows everything about it. You know?
And what you can do about it? Is that also
Nothing.
I have a meta answer. You have to simulate your attacker. You have to think, who am I trying to escape from? You can't escape from everyone. You have to think, okay, am I trying to escape from some financial advertising company that has such and such resources and are tracking by running nodes in the Bitcoin network that will see from where I broadcast my transactions? Am I trying to escape from the exchange from which I bought Bitcoins and I don't want Coinbase to know that I'm playing poker with the Bitcoins they sold? You have to have a specific attacker in mind, and then you can even begin answering such a question.
It may be obvious to the crowd here. I think it's very obvious to the panel here. But I find it curious how many times I need to explain that and show why Bitcoin, for example, is not private. And people say, well, they just know my address. They don't know who I am. Well, if you do any real-life transaction with that person, they know who you are now. So if we look at the company, let's say we have company A and company B, they do business between themselves, and they also use the same supplier. Let's say that supplier only sells one product. Now, once they do one transaction with each other, company A can know exactly what company B is ordering from the supplier and when. And that's information that you don't want to share with your competition. So, and the efforts that were mentioned before are trying to obfuscate. But if you have enough computing power, you will find out who's that person and what they're doing. So I think that adding a top, I think that because of that, in order to reach mass adoption, we really do need a privacy layer that is augmenting the blockchain as it is today. Otherwise, it's going to be a speculative, investment tool that some people use, but where it's not going to be adopted as a hard currency, as we talked about in the beginning.
Just to elaborate on your point about obfuscation, that's why I think one of the most effective ways of improving privacy is simply to massively increase the amount of irrelevant information. Because you don't hide the information, but you make it much more expensive to make sense of it.
All right, we're done here. And now we're open to questions from the crowd. Anyone wants to ask?
I'm going to step out. I have a hard stop. I have dinner to get to, so I'll just say goodbye.
If anyone wants to ask Maya a question, you can grab her in the elevator or at her family dinner. If you want to ask the rest of them, yeah.
Isn't H.D. wallets addressing some kind of a privacy issue in Bitcoin?
Are H.D. wallets solving the privacy issue, right?
Well, I think not at all. It's just an address, right? So you still have an address. It's just a hardware wallet. So if you do one transaction to you send me some money, or I send you some money, then I know that it's you and that's it, right?
I think you probably meant the hierarchical deterministic wallets, the HD, not hardware wallets. But the answer is similar. I mean, I think that in the white paper Satoshi said there's like a small subsection near the end about privacy, and he's saying, well, there's some problems with privacy, but if you use a lot of addresses, you'll be fine, basically. And it's probably, yeah, you should have thought about it a little more. So
The D stands for deterministic. So as long as the way you are determining the addresses is kept private, sure, you're fine. You even have less information that you need to store in order to get an infinite number of new addresses. The moment you accidentally leak that deterministic seed, your privacy is gone. And that often happens. In many protocols, you have to share that seed for some purpose, and then you find yourself having shared the information more widely than you intended. It can even bring in security implications. So it's a black and white, if not quite black, answer.
And you can even, in normal use, create linkage between addresses just because you need to send more money than you have in one address, or because change, and there are many reasons why you normally create linkage between addresses.
So yeah, it's better than without HD wallets, but it's still not perfect. Sarah, you had a question?
Yeah. Is Zcash a scam? Can you trust it?
Is Zcash a scam? Can you trust it? Do we have someone from Zcash here? No. Who wants to do a little thing?
We should ask the Mossad.
Well, in my view, it's not a scam. They have some really great technology, but as I said in my talk, one of the problems is that it's not always private. Most of the transactions are not private, and there is this trusted setup, which which I think they did it once so far. They will have to redo that every time there is like a major upgrade. And that is like a process where you have a number of people, a small number of people, 7, 10, something like that, each one of which has a part of a private key that they need to destroy. But if they collide, and the temptation, I mean, if somebody has this key, they can print money, right? And think, in 10 years from now, the cryptocurrency will be whatever, 100 times bigger than it is now. So the temptation would be like billions of dollars, right? And even the best of us, I mean, cannot be sure that they will not yield to that temptation.
I would never.
Okay, so yeah, so that's, again, in my view, I don't think it's a scam. Great technology, great people, great funding model, community, everything, but I think the trusted setup is a really big problem for the future.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So what do panelists think about payment codes in Bitcoin, like BIP47? Payments, that seems like an interesting solution to the problem of your public deterministic seed, the public part of it leaking. Okay, because so that's the first one, and also let's go with BIP47 payments.
Yeah, so BIP47 is like one of a class of solutions that are, I think, the first were called stealth addresses, if I'm correct. So stealth addresses, it's an interesting solution. It's used in most other privacy coins too. So Zcash uses stealth addresses by default. Monero uses stealth addresses by default. Really? Oh, that's cool. So Parket uses stealth addresses. There are some concerns there too. I mean, for example, a lot of wallets of coins that use stealth addresses will always give you this one address to give out to people. And this means, so if you're giving this address to Coinbase to withdraw some coins, and then you're giving the same address to Silk Road to withdraw some coins. So now, if they work together, they know they're the same person. It's very trivial for them to know that. There's leakage there too, but that's default. That's not necessarily.
The payment codes in BIP47 actually solve that. Okay, because the payment channel it deposits like this tiny transaction into your account, right? Yeah. So if you can share your address, this payment code address with everybody, okay, and
but then they know that you're the same person. So
yes, but
sometimes you don't want that.
You can't see like two. like two organizations that are sending you money, they can't see each other's transactions, even if they have the
Right, but if they're, if they have a back channel where they're discussing transactions, then they know they can share data. They just know they have a unique ID for you.
Oh, you mean, yeah, they're talking with the same person. They know they're paying the same person.
Exactly. So that's defaults, right? You can solve that by changing defaults, but that's more things to think about. Yeah.
I guess
Okay. Oh, you had another second question?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Let's do it quick and to the point.
Lightning with Tor nodes, the level of privacy that would provide versus privacy-oriented currencies.
Okay, Lightning with Tor versus privacy-oriented coins. Do you want to take it, Alex?
Well, I can just say that, there's a lot of things being said about Tor that, it might not really be private, right? You never know who the nodes, who is running the node, right? And where I was running a Tor node for a long time, and sometimes I was looking at the log just for fun, right? But, and other guys can be sharing that with other guys, and
that's actually part of your value proposition.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so last.
Lightning itself can improve your privacy if you use onion routing, not in the network layer, but in the channel balancing layer. But that's additional logic that has to be built in. I think they're working on that, I'm not certain.
Yes, they are.
And about stealth addresses, just an example of what Joy Market did. We used to have a donation address for Joy Market, and you could correlate people's usage of Joy Market by just looking for spends to that donation address. So that was switched to stealth address, and now you can't distinguish what the donation is.
Okay, that'll be all, folks. Thank you for coming.